I want to take a moment and talk about contrast, specifically how it relates to presentation software. Now, whether you're using it for business or in your church, whether you're using PowerPoint, ProPresenter, Easy Worship, MediaShout, the concepts remain the same. If you have poor contrast, you're going to distract and even lose your audience. And if you have good contrast, you're going to keep the audience engaged because they're not going to become bored or distracted. Now, most, if not all, presentation software have a pretty good variety of built-in backgrounds. But when we start customizing our backgrounds, that is when we start running into problems. And as you can see here on the screen, I have a gradient background from black at the top to white at the bottom with black lettering. Obviously, the more black the background, the less you're going to see the lettering. The more white the background, the more you're going to see the lettering. Now, obviously, this is easy to see. But most time, even if you have a custom background, it may look really good on your computer screen. But once you put it through the projector and project it onto the big screen, it looks like garbage. Now, a couple of things about color of text. As you can see from this little example, green on red can be very hard to read. And the same is true with red on blue. You kind of want to stay away from the blue text and the blue backgrounds with red text, as you can see. Black on white is very easy to read, and the same would be true on the reverse, white on black. And here we can see that yellow on blue is relatively easy to see. But in the top two examples, this is going to cause your audience to strain and probably tune out from what you're putting up on the screen. So keep in mind the colors of your text in relation to the color of your background. Here you can see a background that is relatively safe. So if we put some black text upon it, the black text sticks out. Here I put a little bit of a white drop shadow on it. So up here on the N and the A, you can see that it's seen a little bit better than if we took the shadow out. But again, it's not a huge problem on this background. But if we move to a background like this, it's horrible. I've seen this background used a lot in churches, whether up on the screen as a background for lyrics or in brochures. And it causes a lot of problems because you can see the contrast on the man's shirt is very, very dark, and then down here with the sun it starts getting light. So here it's almost acceptable with the text, but here and up here on his hair you can't see it at all. Now what if we add a drop shadow of white like we did here? Again, it's too hard to read even in the dark spaces, and there's not enough contrast between the black text and the background to really make this acceptable. You will lose your audience really quickly because they will strain to see what's going on. Now what if we put white text on there? Now this is almost too much contrast. It kind of hits you in the face, and again, you're struggling here with the white on the lighter areas of the background. We can put a black drop shadow on it, and it helps a little, but definitely not enough. So what if we went with a blue text? Again, here I'm just demonstrating that you don't probably want to use blue text ever. Now, how about something that's not as busy, like this background? If we put black text on it with a drop shadow, you can see it's very difficult to read. And even more so, well, I would say this one without the shadow is almost a little bit easier to read, but still it's pretty poor. We can put a white one on there, and it works fairly well. And if we put a drop shadow on it, it works a little bit better. Now if we take a similar that is primarily blue, but here you see we have a lot of white, and you wind up losing the text on the white. Even if we went with a black, again, you can't see it. So you have to kind of watch out. Even though it's primarily blue, this white and light blue areas will cause some issues. Now here again, you see that the contrast isn't very, very different on this background. Let me take the text out of the way. And it's a nice image, but putting black text on it, it gets lost. Black with a shadow, not a whole lot better. White, again around here and up here and down here where there's more contrast, you kind of lose the lettering, and you will find that your audience will tend to start examining your background to see what it is and pay more attention to that than the text that's on there. Even if we put a black shadow on it, it improves a little bit. Now I think you're getting the concept here. I'm going to try really quickly. I'm going to put on a white text and just run through some of these other tiles so you can see where it works and where it doesn't. Here you would probably want to use the black because it would stick out a little bit more than, and I wouldn't use the drop shadow. If we go down here, whether using black or white, the white works better than the black, obviously. Here I don't think it makes a difference between the black and the white. I just think that this is not a great background to use. We saw this one earlier. Here we have a lot of contrast. We have a very light cloud layer and then the darkness of the rocks and then the cross. If I was to use this image, I would probably crop it a little bit more so these rocks here are only seen a little bit at the bottom and it wouldn't contrast, but I would still have the issue of the crosshair. And making it white, again, I wind up, and I think your audience will wind up viewing the background image more than they would the text. Beautiful photograph, horrible as a background for a presentation, even with white here. Again, here you see an image that has a lot of different colors and shades of light to dark, a lot of contrast here between the rock and the sky, and then this boulder here in front, which is really light. Again, it's a great image, but it doesn't work as a background for presentation software. And this, again, I like this image a lot, but if I put black on there, it almost works. I would probably tend to lighten up the image a little bit more to create a greater contrast between the black text. If I put white on here, you can see it just gets blown out. So you can see that you need to keep in mind what color your text is that you're using in relation to the background. And again, just because it looks great on your computer screen, pop it up on your iMac or pop it through, if you're doing a business presentation, on a projector up on a screen to really see how much contrast you're going to have. Now you also have to keep in mind that the ambient light in the room, whether you're in a conference room, can it be darkened completely? Whether you're in a church, how much ambient light do you have up on your iMac screens? That all comes into play. So don't just take what you see on your computer screen as gospel. Pardon the pun. I hope you found this beneficial. And if you have any questions, you can always reach me via my website at 3 Penguins Design.